Shalom to everybody. We're glad to be back and have this wonderful opportunity to share with you guys again this afternoon. We are posting this on Thursday afternoon. It'll be dated for the Shabbat, so Shabbat Shalom as well. We are going to get the opportunity to be at a Bible conference and actually catch our breath and make a few stops along the way to some historical sites and get to see some things that I'd never necessarily thought about getting to see. So we'll certainly be happy to share with you guys once we get back next week. So we're going to post this for Saturday's Shabbat service, and then we will be back next Wednesday night. We're going to pick back up in the book of Ecclesiasticus. Certainly Yehovah is good, and he's true, and he's right, and he has every desire for us to be successful. But I do think that all of us have a concept and an understanding that success in Yehovah's kingdom means to be obedient. And so if you really want to be successful with Yehovah, then all you have to do is be obedient to him. And so I hope you guys will be blessed. We're back in 2nd Maccabees chapter 5. We saw that through many, many things, these people, and I do have to say that it definitely does on many levels appear to me that there may not be quite as drastic a shift between the Maccabees and David Koresh or the Romans and the American government. I know that it's not popular, but there are a lot of people right now who are in the middle of horrible amounts of turmoil because the picture that is being painted in this society that we live. And so I hope you guys will understand, even though I may be hard sometimes, I really do love you and I really don't have any desire to hurt anybody. Sometimes for all of us, the truth hurts. The truth hurts me. When I read these verses and I know that I've erred and I've failed and I'm not as good as I should be, and I just sometimes want to pull my hair out. Why can't I be stronger? Why can't I be smarter? Why can't I be better? Why can't I do these things more easily? And so I would certainly like to encourage you, if you feel that way, then there's still hope. There's still hope for all of us. There are some things that I don't know that should provoke hope in us. There are some things that I don't think should provoke hope in us. But if our heart is right, our minds are right, and we err, and then we take the steps necessary. You know, I said it a long time ago in the past that I have found for my journey with Yehovah that every time I lose touch with Yah, I have to go back to where I knew him last, where I was with him. Sometimes sometimes it's going back to where he spoke to me last. And so if you go through those spells, then that's normal and that's to be understood. But I want you to know that Yehovah is trustworthy. Yehovah is true. He's not gonna forsake those people who continue to follow him. And that's part of what I was trying to share last night. Yes, of course. Can our actions prove to him that we're not trying to follow him? Absolutely, unequivocally, our actions are what prove to him that we're not trying to follow him. But on the whole, we are mostly, all of us, I think, or most of the people anyway that I've met and that I talk to and those that are interfaced with me, most of those people are genuinely, even though they do fail. So the ones that aren't, then that is what it is. So we're going to pray, and then we're going to get started in chapter 5 of the book of 2nd Maccabees. And I hope that you will see some of the correlations that I'm seeing that get brought up. This is prophetic, but it's not prophetic. It's prophetic because everything that Yehovah does is prophetic. Everything that he does is speaking about now, typically now, and yet another time. And so there's been many great blessings that he's shown and brought lately that I just absolutely am overwhelmed with his kindness and his wisdom and his understanding. He does protect those people. Sometimes we have to go through bad things, as I shared with you last night, and sometimes those bad things are by him. I know there are many people teaching out there about people that come into your life, sometimes possessing sicknesses, that doesn't change the fact that Yehovah put them in your life to learn something. Instead, I think I haven't always been wonderful about the learning. I get hung up in the moment or get hung up in the thing, and I miss the moment. And I think Yehovah wants us to grow so that we don't continue to do that constantly. So, shalom to each and every one of you who might happen by to see this. I hope that Yehovah blesses you richly. I hope that you will trust him in a new way. And so we're going to pray, and then I'm going to get started here. And Father, bless you today. Thank you for your wonderful love and mercy. We thank you, Father, even as we do this early in preparation for this wonderful blessing that you've given us, that we get the opportunity, Father, to celebrate your Shabbat together. May all of those who come along, may these words reach out, as all of them, may they reach out and bring us into places of correction and places of understanding and places of wisdom and places of hope and places of healing and places of help. And so I bless you today. I ask you that you would help me to speak this word forth, that it might be a blessing to someone. And I thank you for all of your goodness. Amen. Amen. All right, so we picked up last time. We have all of this stuff going on. These people are doing all kinds of bad things. And folks, as it always is, there are people in the Torah movement that are in the Torah movement in name and in name only. And then there are genuine people who really do want to live his word. And that's why I often try to share with people, for all that I'm passionate and all that I'm hard about, the hardness is because there is a level of horribleness to reality. And I know that we live in a society that's trying to run from reality. They don't want this reality, Yehovah's reality. They want their, in many ways, socialistic reality. And so I want you guys to see that we're really not any different than any of the generations who have lived before. We're really not in that much better of a place than these Maccabees are. And so I hope you'll open your heart and your mind and you'll grab a hold of that and see that. Let's go there. About the same time, Antiochus prepared his second voyage into Mitzrayim, Antiochus Epiphanes. And then it happened that through all the city, for the space of almost 40 days, there were seen horsemen running in the air in cloth of gold and armed with lances like a band of soldiers. So for 40 days in this city, there were people that saw things going on. And troops of horsemen in array, encountering and running one against another, with shaking of shields and multitude of pikes and drawing of swords and casting of spears and glittering of golden ornaments and a harness of all sorts. Wherefore every man prayed that apparition might turn to good. Now when there was gone forth a false rumor, as though Antiochus had been dead, Jachin took at the least 1,000 men and suddenly made an assault upon the city. And they that were up on the walls being put back, and the city at length taken, Menelaus fled into the castle. But Jachin slew his own citizens without mercy, not considering that to get the day of them of his own nation would be most unhappy day for him. But thinking that they had been his enemies and not his countrymen whom he conquered. Howbeit for all this he obtained not the principality, but at the last received shame for the reward of his treason, and he fled again into the country of the Ammonim. In the end, therefore, he had an unhappy return, being accused before Aretas, the king of the Aravim, fleeing from city to city in pursuit of all men, hated as a forsaker of the Torah, and being had in abomination as an open enemy of his country and his countrymen, he was cast out into Mitzrayim. How many times in our lives have we had, maybe you've experienced what I have, that you have people who come in and are supposedly part of this Torah keeping movement and read scriptures and spend time, and you talk about scripture and all of this stuff, and then you see them move away from Yehovah, most generally, unfortunately, into lives that are not the standard that the scriptures clearly show us that we're supposed to live. Once again, I'm not talking about perfection, folks. None of us are perfect. I want to be open. I want to own my failures. I constantly fail. I constantly have in my heart a desire to do good and fail. And the only thing that I know is that Yehovah keeps speaking to me, because I keep getting back up. I keep trying to make what's right. I keep trying to own the responsibility that is mine for my failures. It's not your fault. It's not somebody else's fault. It's not some person who left's fault. It's my fault that I failed, not yours. And it's not my fault if you fail. It's your fault. And if we were living in a place of understanding with Yehovah, we would immediately begin to accept responsibility. That is to say, Yehovah takes responsibility for his actions. He has no failures, so of course he doesn't have to do that. But I am not him, so alas, I have failures, and I have to own them. I have to stand up. I have to be honest. I have to let people know that this walk is different than what we've been taught it was. It's not an okaying of or an approval of our sin. Our sin is not okay, folks. I don't care if it's my sin I'm talking about or a total stranger's sin. It's still not okay. Sin is not Yehovah's standard for humanity. And so we see that this guy turned his back on his people, thought he slew them, and then he runs out and leaves, as often is the case, only to be persecuted more and more and more and more by people as a Torah leaver. Just so you understand, people who get in that still suffer punishment, because the punishment never has anything to do with me. The punishment comes from Yehovah. I have no desire to punish. Now, bring people and make people accountable for their sin. If I have the power to do so, I certainly will do that, because I want to be accountable for my sin. But there's a difference between making someone accountable for their failings and punishing them for their failings. Sometimes I'm sure to some of you maybe who felt that way, maybe you felt like I was punishing you. I'm really not trying to punish you, but there are standards, and somebody has to say it. I hope that you agree with that. If you don't, then I understand, but I would expect that you would be able to understand that. And so he was hated as a forsaker of the Torah, and being had in abomination as an open enemy of his country and his countrymen, he was cast out into Mitzrayim. Thus he that had driven many of their country perished in a strange land, retiring to the Lacedaemonians, and thinking there to find help by reason of his kindred. And he that had cast out many unburied had none to mourn for him, nor any solemn funerals at all, nor sepulchre with his fathers. Now when this that was done came to the king's ear, he thought that Yehuda had revolted. Whereupon, removing out of Mitzrayim in a furious mind, he took the city by force of arms, and commanded his men of war not to spare such as they met, and to slay such as went out upon the houses. And thus there was killing of young and old, making away of men, women, children, the slaying of virgins and infants. And there were destroyed within the space of 3 whole days 80,000, whereof 40,000 were slain in the conflict, and no fewer sold than slain. Wow. 40,000 people in 3 days' time were slaughtered, and that many were sent into slavery. Wow. Do you think that it may not be so far-fetched that we could be about to see a socialistic takeover? I don't think it is. And I think that they have the capacity to be more ruthless, or at least as ruthless, because we are living in a time that was spoken of where men's minds would be corrupt. Multiple times through the course of these 5 chapters we've read, we've found where people have actually gone mad. Wow. Yet is he not content with this? He wasn't content with this many people, 40,000 people dying and 40,000 people going into slavery. He wasn't content with that. Yet was he not content with this, but presumed to go into the most holy temple of all the world, and Menelaus, the traitor to the Torah and to his own country, being his guide, and taking the holy vessels with polluted hands and profane hands, pulling down the things that were dedicated by other kings to the augmentation and the glory and the honor of the place, he gave them away. And so haughty was Antiochus in mind that he considered not that Jehovah was angry for a while for the sins of them that dwelt in the city, and therefore his eye was not upon the place. So because Antiochus doesn't quite understand or know who Jehovah is, he doesn't give credence to the fact that Jehovah has been angered. For had they not been formerly wrapped in many sins, this man, as soon as he had come, had forthwith been scourged and put back from his presumption, as Heliodorus was, whom Seleucus the king sent to view the treasury. Nevertheless, Elohim did not choose the people for the place's sake, but the place for the people's sake. We oftentimes, I think, get Jehovah's principles backwards. We view them from our perspective, and we don't view them from his perspective. If we would, I think all of our lives would probably be a lot better off. What must it look like to a creator who created, and everything that he created he said was good, and then man comes along and turns everything that's good into something horrible? So nevertheless, Elohim did not choose the people for the place's sake, but the place for the people's sake. And therefore the place itself that was partaker with them of the adversity that happened to the nation did afterwards communicate in the benefits sent from Jehovah. And as it was forsaken in the wrath of El Shaddai, so again the great Jehovah reconciled, it was set up with all glory. So when Antiochus had carried out of the temple 1,800 talents, he departed in all haste unto Antioch, weening in his pride to make the land navigable and the sea passable by foot. Such was the haughtiness of his mind. Can I tell you that statement right there immediately drew to my mind what our government is doing to the skies by dumping barium and aluminum in the sky, owning to them saying, we are gods and we will master the weather. Wow. You know, folks, it really is true that everything that has been, whatever we're going to go through, whatever we're going to suffer through, has already been. I got a little revelation, I think, the other day from Jehovah, and I felt like it's been in me, and I've been pondering it all along, that what if in reality, brothers and sisters, Jehovah, who is never ending, what if his pattern always is the same? I shared with some of you that where I believe it's in the year 500, like 5,538, 28, something like that, according to the Jewish count. Well, we know that 6 days is 6,000 years in Yehovah's time. So ask yourself this a question. How have we tried to tie up an omnipotent Elohim by making him have to create everything in 7 days when he himself tells us that that's not his time frame? But ponder this even more. Ask yourself this question. How many weeks of creation have there been since he began to create? I've always struggled with the Neanderthals. I've always struggled because it's obvious that those things existed. You're very closed-minded if you can't see that they find these bones that are genetically very similar but not identical to ours. You're very closed-minded to think that Yehovah could have only created humanity once. And I felt like the Spirit gave it to me that if we would look at the world in the manner in which Yehovah has presented himself, we would probably begin to find out that all of this cyclic stuff that I've been talking about, in reality, what if every 7,000 years, every 6,000 years is an end of a creation, and there's 1,000-year Shabbat, and then Yehovah begins to work again for 6 more days? That means that within 500 years, this whole thing that we think is real is going to be gone, and Yehovah is going to start all over again. Now, I guarantee you can get in front of the most noted scholars, and you can't prove that what I just said to you isn't true, and neither can they. I believe that we have defamed El Shaddai, my Elohim, by limiting him to having one opportunity to create. See, the thing about a creator is a creator never quits being a creator. He has been. He was before there was anything, and he will be when there is nothing. What will he be doing? He will be creating. So just let that kind of soak into you. Maybe if you're closed-minded, that's going to be all nonsense. But if you open your mind up and listen to Yehovah, I think that you will find that all of these things that have gone on in history could actually be broken up in 7,000-year segments, which is why we really don't have, other than archaeological remains, we really don't have much historical evidence past 5,000 years ago. Why? Because Yehovah cleaned the slate and started again. Can I tell you what Peter was talking about? I believe he's talking about, he was prophesying, he was speaking with foreknowledge of Yehovah cleaning the slate when he said, don't you know the earth and all that is in it will be burned with a fervent heat? Why? Because Yehovah is going to clean the earth, and he's going to create again, and 7,000 years will exist, and then he will do it again. And then he will do it again, and then he will do it again, however long he deems to do it again. So that's a little side thing, but I think if you'll think about it and let the Ruach speak to you, you'll begin to see that Yehovah may have exposed something absolutely enormous to us. Folks, if all of this that we see, and all the pain and all the suffering and all the sickness and all the mental madness and if all of that stuff is part of what Yehovah calls good, I don't want to see what bad was. Somebody on a TV show we were watching the other night said, well, this is both heaven and hell. And folks, if this is heaven, I sure am scared of hell. So I'll carry on. So nevertheless, Elohim, verse 19, nevertheless, Elohim did not choose the people for the place's sake, but the place for the people's sake. This was all created for us, folks. We go read the book of Thomas about the true Yeshua said of his brother James, Yaakov, who took over the first century, not Christian church, the first century Messian church. They were Messianics. They weren't Christians. Christianity did not exist. That name gets put over on Yeshua's followers. They were never Christians. There was a split. There was a division. Rome created Christianity, and the Messianists continued under Yaakov for 125 years till the grandson of Jude, the brother of Yeshua, and passed. They still continued. They're continuing today. I believe I'm a Messianist. I believe David Koresh was a Messianist. I believe that there have been many Messianists all through history. People who come back and desire to walk back in the light of Yehovah again, who love his Torah, who want to do Yehovah's will, even if they're human and fragile and broken and failing, and on and on and on we go. Nevertheless, Elohim did not choose the people for the place's sake. He chose the place for the people's sake. And therefore the place itself that was partaker with them of the adversity that happened to the nation did afterwards communicate in the benefits sent from Yehovah. And as it was forsaken in the wrath of El Shaddai, so again the great Yehovah being reconciled, it was set up with all glory. So when Antiochus had carried out of the temple 1,800 talents, he departed in all haste unto Antioch, weaning in his pride, to make the land navigable and the sea passable by foot. Such was the haughtiness of his mind. And he left governors to vex the nation. At Jerusalem, Philip, for his country Pyrgian, and for manners more barbarous than he that set him there. And at Gerizim, Andronicus, and besides Menelaus, who worse than all the rest bore a heavy hand over the citizens, having a malicious mind against his countrymen, the Yehudim. And he sent also the detestable ringleader Apollonius with an army of 22,000, commanding him to slay all of those that were in their best age, and to sell the women and the younger sort, who coming up to Jerusalem and pretending peace did forbear till the holy day of the Shabbat, when taking the Yehudim, keeping holy day, he commanded his men to arm themselves, and so he slew all of them that were gone to the celebration of the Sabbath, and running through the city with weapons slew great multitudes. But Yehuda Maccabee with 9 others and thereabout withdrew himself into the wilderness, and lived in the mountains after the manner of beasts, with his company, who fed on herbs continually, lest they should be partakers of the pollution. So question, did these people see horrible, abominable things by hands of their own countrymen? Yes, sir, they sure did. They absolutely did. So once again, to bring everything from the there to the here, why would we expect any different if we truly understand who Yehovah is? He's always setting the stage for the cycle to begin again. But Yehuda Maccabee with 9 others withdrew himself into the wilderness. Did they live a good life? They were Yehovah's people. They were fighting for the Torah. They didn't live a good life. They suffered. They constantly hid. So ask yourself, is it possible because of the lie of Christianity that we believe what being blessed according to the scripture means may be something different than what he means when he says be blessed? I know this is really foreign doctrine to many of you because you grew up in Christianity, and if bad things happen, then it must be the devil. Listen, I've said those words more times than I could count. I've stood in the pulpit and preached those words. If you're having struggles in your life, you're having struggles because of the devil. Sometimes, folks, we're having struggles because of Yehovah. And that's really hard for our Christian minds to deal with. How could a God who loves me so much, who will never leave me and never forsake me, how could he let me go through this? Any of you ever asked that question? Personally, I suspect every one of us have asked that question not just a few times, but hundreds of times. He wants us to learn how to overcome sin, folks, not to be overcome by sin. And taking the holy vessels with polluted hands and with profane hands, pulling down the things that were dedicated by the other kings to the augmentation of glory and honor of the place, he gave them away. And so haughty was Antiochus in mind. You know, that verse, I've gone over it several times, and I keep going back to it because can we not look in our world around us and see the haughtiness of pride in the people in our society? Can we not see that in politics? Can we not see that? I'm for Trump, but I have to be honest with you. He's very haughty and he's very prideful. And I guess on one level, I'm glad that he has the integrity and the character that he does, that he stands up. But you have to admit, neither one of those things are going to bring the blessing. For had they not formerly been wrapped in many sins, this man, as soon as he had come, had forthwith been scourged and put back from his presumption, as Heliodorus was, whom Seleucus the king sent to view the treasury. Nevertheless, Elohim did not choose the people for the people's sake. He did not choose you because of you. He chose you because of him. How amazing that is. The purpose of that concept, if I can share this, if you already get it, then you already understand. The purpose of that concept is that we have to then make a decision, folks. It's not like he made anyone. Every person who has ever followed Yehovah made an active decision to do so. He wants us to choose him because we want him. He wants us to choose him because we need him. We have to have him. We, if I might, although it's a horrible term in psychology, we are codependent on our Elohim. Without him, we can't function. And so the place, therefore, itself was a partaker with them of the adversity that happened to the nation. We don't stop and think about that very often, do we? That America is going to be a partaker of with the people. In other words, as us being an American, as we go into bondage, as we suffer, as we come under the thumb, as we do that, so does our country. Because the country is us. And he's saying the same thing in a positive note here about the country both suffered because of the people, and the country was also blessed because of the people. So the land is a partaker with us. And so Yehovah did afterwards also communicate in benefits sent from Yehovah, and as it was forsaken in the wrath of El Shaddai, so again the great Yehovah being reconciled, it was set up with all glory. So when Antiochus had carried out of the temple 1,800 talents, he departed in all haste unto Antioch, weaning his pride to make the land navigable and the sea passable by foot. Such was the haughtiness of his mind. And he left governors to vex the nation at Jerusalem, Philip for his country a Pargian, and for his manners more barbarous than he that had set him there. And at Gerizim, Andronicus, and besides Menelaus, who worse than all the rest, bore a heavy hand over the citizens, having a malicious mind against his countrymen, the Yehudim. So here's a thing I want you to see. Maybe you've already seen it. Do you notice how every one of these things that happen, all of this cruelty comes out, is according to Yehovah, is tied directly to what, dear one? Directly to their minds. Why do we find in the New Testament, why do we find these lists that tell us of what things are going to look like, and then we look and we see those things happening? You know, we're told that at the end of time that men's minds would be seared, their conscience would be seared as with a hot iron. We have a disease that is very prominent in our society that has to do with no conscience. And on and on and on and on and on. So when Antiochus had carried out of the temple all of this stuff. All of these people are attaching. We have minds going crazy, ballistic, berserk. They're devoid of empathy, and they're devoid of sympathy. He sent that detestable ringleader Apollonius with an army of 20,000, commanding him to slay all of those that were in their best age and to sell the women and the younger sort, who coming to Jerusalem and pretending peace did forbear till the holy day of the Sabbath. So now we're going to even more. Folks, I don't know if you understand, but this whole Torah movement thing that's happening on the earth has been ordained by Yehovah, and the Torah keepers are inevitably going to end up being punished. Will there be Christians that are punished? Yes, probably so. But I'm going to guarantee you, when we get to the end of this thing and the punishment gets worse, it's going to be the people who keep the Torah again that suffer the most. So they're going to, why? Because they're going to attack us on the Shabbat, just like we already have multiple pictures of this happening in history, folks. And we find it here of one who was an apostate and turned his back on Yehovah and turned his back on the Torah. And so what does he do? He says, well, let's go get them while it's the Sabbath. They won't fight. So Yehuda Maccabee, being smart, says, we'll get out of here. Let's go out in the woods, because we can't do no fighting if we're dead. And he withdrew himself into the wilderness, and he lived in the mountains after the manner of beasts with his company, who fed on herbs continually, lest they should be partakers of the pollution. Not long after this, the king sent an old man of Athens to compel the Yehudim to depart from the Torah of their fathers, and not to live after the Torah of Elohim. Well, folks, haven't we seen that in our society? Don't we have a society who says you don't have to keep the commandments of the Torah because the Old Testament's done away? So how is this guy then any different than us? And not to live after the Torah of Elohim, and to pollute also the temple in Jerusalem, and to call it the temple of Jupiter Olympus, and that in Gerizim of Jupiter the defender of strangers, as they did desire that dwelt in the place. The coming in of this mischief was sore and grievous to the people, for the temple was filled with riot and reveling by the other nations, who dallied with harlots and had to do with women within the circuit of the holy places, and besides that brought in things that were against the Torah. The altar also was filled with profane things which the Torah forbids. Neither was it lawful for a man to guard days of Shabbat or ancient feast, or to profess himself at all to be a Yehudah. And in the day of the king's birth every month they were brought by bitter constraint to eat of the sacrifices, and when the feast of Bacchus was kept, the Yehudim were compelled to go in procession to Bacchus carrying ivy. Moreover, there went out a decree to the neighbor cities of the heathen by the suggestion of Ptolemy against the Yehudim, that they should observe the same fashions and be partakers of their sacrifices. And whoso would not conform themselves to the manners of the other nations should be put to death. Then might a man have seen the present misery. For there were 2 women brought who had circumcised their children, whom when they had openly led round about the city, the babes hanging at their breasts, they cast them down headlong. Pretty crazy, folks. Can I tell you something? What we're reading here in the celebration, the time that is going on right now, I know for many today is 420, but yesterday was a time. I had somebody write me last night after the service and ask this question. Do you think that it's possible that what went on at Ruby Ridge and what went on in Waco is really the exact same thing as we are reading here even this very day? And I hate to tell you, dear one, it is true. Those people were killed because they lived according to a different standard than what American society said they could live. It's no different than Rome. It's exactly the same kind of manipulation and holding and overcoming. And they threw the baby from her breast off of the wall. And others that had run together into caves nearby to guard the Sabbath secretly, being discovered by Philip, were all burnt together because they made a conscience to help themselves for the honor of the most sacred day. So this story has been told multiple different times, folks. These people went out into the Judean desert where the Essenes lived, where Yehukan and the Mercer lived. They went out into the Qumran area, and they went inside of a cave, which is what they did to get away from the government so that they could keep Shabbat. And Philip found out about it, and he burned all of them in the cave that they were in on the Shabbat. So those people gave their life to keep Yehovah's Shabbat. You know, Yehovah tells us in the book of Isaiah that the sign that we're his people is that we will keep his Shabbat. We will not break his Shabbat. So that's pretty huge. Now I beseech those that read this Sefer, that's you and me, we are reading this Sefer, that they be not discouraged for these calamities, but that they judge those punishments not to be for destruction, but for the chastening of our nation. So as I started out here about, we really don't understand that it is highly possible, just as it was with the Maccabees, that all of these atrocities that have come up against people who are quote-unquote Bible believers, I won't say to you, nor will I even suppose that me and David Koresh would have been friends, or theologically we would have been on the same page, because I don't believe we would have. I don't think it matters who you are, you know, if there was any truth, which hasn't even been proven that I know of, that he was with 10 or 12-year-old girls. That ain't okay, no matter what day it is. But that wasn't everything, and that, as far as I know, that was never even proven. So in the event that it happened, then yes, he should have been punished. But I'm not quite sure killing 85 people was the punishment he deserved. I don't think those children had anything to do with how they were born or when they were born. So these people made a conscience to help themselves for the honor of the most sacred day. That's kind of an interesting verbiage, that they made a conscience. Is it possible that all of the sicknesses, the mental illnesses, where they say that the person doesn't have a conscience, I just can't quite marry those two. I just can't. I mean, maybe it's true. I'm not saying that it's not. But I'm simply saying that I just don't know how you do things to other people such as this, and you had no conscience, and they were sensitive simply to keeping the Shabbat, caused their consciences, the thought of defiling it would defile them. What a horrible state of existence we live in today if that's the case. We're really not any different than these people that are killing these Yehudah. Now I beseech those that read this Sefer, that they be not discouraged for these calamities, but that they judge those punishments not to be for destruction, but for the chastening of our nation. So it is exactly opposite of the way that we view things. For it is a sign of his great goodness when wicked doers are not suffered any long time, but forthwith punished. For not as with other nations whom Yehovah patiently forbears to punish, till they have come to the fullness of their sins, so deals he with us. Lest that being come to the height of sin, afterwards he should take vengeance on us. And therefore he never withdraws his mercy from us, and though he punish with adversity, yet he never forsakes his people. Please listen to that. I've had people say, well, you can sin and then it's like you just continue to go on. Listen, folks. The only redeeming value, if I have a redeeming value of myself, is that I'm up till this point in my life, I've never quit. I always keep going on. But just because I keep going on doesn't mean he doesn't make me pay a price for my failures. Lest that being come to the height of sin, afterwards he should take vengeance on us. And therefore he never withdraws his mercy from us, and though he punish us with adversity, which he will, yet he never forsakes his people. Folks, those are some of the most precious words ever spoken. I've seen people, and of course, if you've lived a life that's a lie, and you constantly lie, and you constantly steal and cheat and deceive, and all of those things, and that is your lifestyle, and you just try to throw the Torah in there every now and then, that's not the same thing. I'm sorrowful. I'm talking about people who have a desire to keep Jehovah's word inside of them. They have a conscience about his word. They mess up and they weep about it because it hurts them that they have failed Jehovah. And unfortunately, none of us can see that about another person. I've had many people weep and cry that I've counseled over the course of the last 20 years, and most of those people always turn and go back to what they were before. And therefore he never withdraws his mercy from us, though he punishes with adversity, yet he never forsakes his people. But let this be spoken now for a warning unto us. And now we will come to the declaring of the matter in a few words. Eleazar, one of the principal scribes, an aged man, and of a well-favored countenance, was constrained to open his mouth and to eat swine's flesh. But he, choosing rather to die gloriously than to live stained with such an abomination, spit it forth and came of his own accord to the torment. Listen, dear one, the Bible clearly tells us that the act of homosexuality is an abomination, and we think we're supposed to condone it. This society is brainwashing people to hell, folks. And it behooved them to come that are resolute to stand out against such things as are against the Torah, for love of life to be tasted. But they that had the charge of that wicked feast, for the old acquaintance that they had with the man, taking him aside, besought him to bring flesh of his own provision, such as was lawful for him to use, and make as if he did eat of the flesh taken from the sacrifice commanded by the king. So he even has people that are under the king's authority who admire him and who say, Eleazar, why don't you just bring a piece of sheep's flesh, and why don't you act like you take a piece of pig, and why don't you eat your sheep's flesh? And he says, but that would be deception. That would be manipulation. Does anyone in our society understand anymore that deception and manipulation is still witchcraft? That in so doing he might be delivered from death, and for the old friendship with them find favor. But he began to consider discreetly, and as he became his age, and the excellency of his ancient years, and the honor of his gray head, whereon he was come, he is most honest, and his most honest education from a child, or rather, the holy Torah made and given by Elohim. Therefore he answered accordingly, and willed them straightway to send him to Sheol. So his education came from the Torah. What a profound statement, folks. The only education that has any value is the education of the Torah. That's why this country has more college-educated people, and we're in a worse state than we've ever been. Therefore he answered accordingly, and willed them straightway to send him to Sheol. For it becomes not our age, said he, in any wise to dissemble. Whereby many young persons might think that Eleazar, being 80 years old and 10, were now gone to a strange religion. And so they, through my hypocrisy and desired to live a little time and a moment longer, should be deceived by me, and I get a stain to my old age and make it abominable. Think about the concept of the scriptures and the commands. Love Yehovah your Elohim with all your heart, all your mind, and all yourself. And the second is just like it. Love your neighbor as yourself. Eleazar is willing to go to death for his own body so that he doesn't deceive those who are coming up behind him. My goodness, I don't know if that affects you, but that just rips me up inside. What if the truth of the matter is, folks, we really haven't found the level that Yehovah's people should be walking at yet? What if that's what all of this is about? It's not about those people who have no conscience. They won't hear this message, and if they do, they won't understand it. It's not about the ones whose hearts aren't really right. If they hear this message, they won't understand it. It's about those people who do hear it. They hearken unto his voice, and they have a desire to follow his Torah. And the standard of the Torah, folks, is the ultimate standard. So through hypocrisy, I might live a little longer, but I won't do it because I will deceive those that are younger to think that I ate pig meat. Wow. For though for the present time I should be delivered from the punishment of men, yet should I not escape the hand of El Shaddai, neither alive nor dead. See, he had the revelation that I've been trying to share with you guys lately. Folks, you only have the time that you're alive to figure this out. You don't have any time once it's over. There's nothing left but judgment after death. And that's a wonderful day if you've made the right decisions and you walk righteously with Yehovah while you're alive, and that's a horrible day if you haven't. So judgment is going to be about what you do while you're alive, not what you do while you're dead. So for the present time I should be delivered from the punishment of men, yet should I not escape the hand of El Shaddai, neither alive nor dead. Wherefore now, manfully changing his life. Folks, this word that is all through Maccabees, you will hear me say it over and over again in the reading. Manfully, 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 manfully. Folks, I hate to tell you that the demasculization of our society is going to be the destruction of our society. I assure you there's not a Chinese person, and there's certainly not a Roman person who's scared of a woke homosexual. In fact, I believe when they do take this country over, and I believe that it does fit with George Washington's third vision, I believe they will take this country over, and when they do, I believe the first people they will kill will be homosexuals. Wow. This stuff is just so huge, man. I got a million things every time I read one of these passages, and it's just like, can I spend an hour here? And leave a notable example to such as be young to die willingly and courageously. Verse 27. Wherefore now, manfully changing this life, I will show myself such one as my age requires, and leave a notable example to such as be young to die willingly and courageously for the honorable and holy Torah. What an amazing statement. And when he had said these words, immediately he went to the torment. They didn't have to force him, he went. They that led him changing the good, will they bore him a little before into hatred? Because the foresaid speeches proceeded as they thought from a desperate mind. Was it he was probably the most complete in that very minute. But when he was ready to die with stripes, he groaned and said, It is manifest unto Jehovah that has the holy knowledge that whereas I might have been delivered from death, I now endure sore pains in my body by being beaten, but in soul am well content to suffer these things, because I fear him. Many people have had arguments about why the people, and I'm going to say this, and this may be shocking to some of you. Maybe you would be one of the ones who would say, well, I would never do that. But I have to tell you, those 85 people that died at the Branch Davidian compound in Waco, Texas, understood what I just read to you. Why, when they had every opportunity for 51 days to leave of their own free will, why didn't they? Because it was better to them to die than it was to live and be ashamed. I now endure sore pains in body by being beaten, but in soul I am well content to suffer these things, because I fear him. And thus this man died, leaving his death for an example of a noble courage and a memorial of virtue, not only to young men, but unto all of his nation. We're going to take just about 10 minutes, and we will come back. I hope that we will make it through chapter 7, which will set the stage for yet again next week. So, shalom to each and every one of you. We will be back in just a few minutes. Take your time and get something to drink and use the restroom, and we'll pick up here at chapter 7. Shalom. hope that you guys had a nice break, and we certainly did. What an amazing time this is to live in, folks. I see Yehovah's hand mightily working everywhere. It's been so wonderful, the things that Yehovah always brings, and he is, for everyone who believes him, he is constantly bringing those things to people that they have need of. Sometimes they're not always necessarily the things that we want. Sometimes they're the things that we need. And there's a difference between wanting and needing. So we're going to pick back up in chapter 7, and we'll move forward. And it came to pass also that 7 brethren with their mother were taken, and they were compelled by the king against the Torah. So let's get this picture already. There's a mother, doesn't say the father is even alive. There is a mother who has 7 sons, and they are compelled by the government to break the Torah. Let's see what happens. Maybe this is a perfect picture for all of us to look at in our lives, in our everyday lives. Let's see. And it came to pass also, so that means at the same time and with this that we just read, that 7 brethren with their mother were taken, and compelled by the king against the Torah to taste swine's flesh, and were tormented with scourges and whips. So ask yourself, is food really a big deal? Is it really a big deal? Am I going to go to hell? Does God hate me because I broke the food laws? I think you have to answer that question for yourself, dear one. You know, I used to try to help people by giving my opinion, and I'm kind of getting to the point where I don't even have an interest to do that as much as I used to. Because the people who don't believe him are not going to believe him no matter what you say. And the people that do, they'll choose to. And they'll do what's right. And compelled by the king against the Torah to taste swine's flesh, and were tormented with scourges and whips. But one of them that spoke first said thus, "What would you ask or learn of us? We are ready to die rather than to transgress the Torah of our fathers." Then the king, being in a rage, commanded pans and cauldrons to be made hot, which forthwith, being heated, he commanded to cut out the tongue of him that spoke first, and to cut off the uttermost parts of his body, and the rest of his brethren and his mother looking on. How horrible could this possibly be, to have to stand and watch your son, who stood up for the Torah, watch his tongue be cut off, and then cut. What other appendages do you think that they cut off? There's only 5 other appendages I know of in a male. Now when he was thus maimed in all of his members, he commanded him, being yet alive, to be brought to the fire, and to be fried in the pan. And as the vapor of the pan was for a good space dispersed, they exhorted one another with the mother to die manfully, saying thus, Yehovah Elohim looks upon us, and in truth has comfort in us, as Moshe in his song, which witnessed to their faces, declared, saying, and he shall be comforted in his servants. So when the first was dead after this number, they brought the second to him to make him a mocking stock. And when they had pulled off the skin of his head with the hair, they asked him, will you eat before you be punished throughout every member of your body? I want to ask you guys a question. Many of you are still hung up back in Christianity, and the New Testament's real. And that's okay, because we were there a long time, so I totally get it. But how many of you remember that the thing that's being looked for in the final apocalypse is people who are going to be asked? Now, we were lied to in the final apocalypse that it was going to be about Jesus. It's not going to be about Jesus, folks. It's going to be about the Torah. They took that. They want you. Understand, these people are the people that are doing these things. They didn't get more stupid. The Romans weren't more stupid than Antiochus Epiphanes was. In fact, the Romans were infinitely superior in the long run. And so what is it that is going to come, the determining factor at the end of time? I believe it is, in fact, going to be the Torah, not Christianity. And Yehovah Elohim looks upon us, and in truth he has comfort in us, as Moshe in his song, which witnessed to their faces, declared, saying, and he shall be comforted in his servants. Yehovah finds comfort in our suffering for him. Wow, that is such a diabolically opposed message to Christianity. So when the first was dead, after this number, they brought the second to make him a mocking, and when they had pulled off the skin of his head, they ripped his head off. The skin, they scalped him, if you will. With the hair, they asked him, will you eat before you be punished throughout every member of your body? But he answered in his own language, so in Hebrew, and said, no. Wherefore he also received the next torment in his order, as the former did. And when he was at the last gasp, he said, you like a fury take us out of this present life, but the King of the world shall raise us up, who have died for his Torah unto everlasting life. Can I tell you, folks, here is the true picture of everlasting life, not what you get in Christianity. This is the truth. It is going to be about the Torah. And everlasting life comes from the Torah. After him was the third made a mocking stock, and when he was required, he put out his tongue, and that right soon, holding forth his hands manfully. So he walks up and just goes, you want it, take it. Like a man. We hear that old saying, clichéic saying, here we have the most perfect picture I've ever seen in my whole 60 years of living. This is the most perfect picture I've ever seen of taking it like a man. And it's glorified by Yehovah, not condemned. And holding forth his hands manfully, and he said courageously, these I had from heaven, and for his Torah I despised them. And from him I hope to receive them again. So much so that the king and they that were with him marveled at the young man's courage, for that he nothing regarded the pains. Now when this man was dead also, they tormented and bangled the fourth in like manner. So when he was ready to die, he said thus, it is good being put to death by men, to look for the hope from Elohim to be raised up again by him. As for you, you shall have no resurrection to life. Now how does 200 years before Yeshua live, how does all of this eternal resurrection to life language, how does it come if that's a Christian thing? It's not a Christian thing. It actually, in the truest sense, is a Hebrew thing. It is a Torah thing. Yehovah said, if you keep my commandments, you shall live. He was talking on this earth, but he was talking after this earth. Keeping the Torah is what leads us to life, salvation. Afterwards they brought the fifth also, and they mangled him. Then looking upon the king, he said, you have power over men. You are corruptible. You do what you will, yet think not that our nation is forsaken of Elohim. But abide a while, and behold his great power, how he will torment you and your seed. After him also they brought the sixth, who being ready to die said, be not deceived without cause, for we suffer these things for ourselves, having sinned against our Elohim. Therefore marvelous things are done unto us. Wow. How amazing. But think not that taking your hand to strive against Elohim, that you shall escape unpunished. But the mother was marvelous above all. You know, we live in a society where the preachers, where the mothers, the parents, are damaging their children. I preached for several years about the damage that parents do to children. And it's so funny how Yehovah has continued to bring that line and to expose to me the damage of people that I know and the destruction and the havoc that has been wreaked on their children. I personally believe many of the mental illnesses that exist because of the parents. When a child is between 1.5 years and 2 years old, if they are not loved properly by their mother, they will suffer under duress and torment for the rest of their life. They know that. There are many people out there with mental sicknesses, folks, that are nothing but the betrayal of them by their parents. I've sat with those people. I've talked with those people. I've watched how much torment those people live in. And the sad fact of the matter is, it's the parents' fault. They abused that child. They screwed that child up so that they can never learn to love. And if it isn't corrected by the time a child is 7 years old, they never fully progress into maturity. They never grow up. They never take responsibility. They lie and have no accountability for it. And it was all because of a bad parent. Here we have a picture of what it is that a Torah-keeping woman is supposed to be. I pray Yehovah let no women have children who are not Torah keepers. Yes, he will, because he wants to punish them. Wow. Listen at this lady. What a woman. She's a womanly woman. Let's see. After him also they brought the sixth. That's verse 18, verse 19. But think not that taking hand to strive against Elohim, that you shall escape unpunished. But the mother, so everything that was said before is now stopped, and what now is the new thought process. But the mother was marvelous above all, and worthy of honorable memory, for when she saw her 7 sons slain within the space of 1 day, that woman stood and watched them murder her 7 wonderful sons. There's no question that a woman, a Torah-keeping woman, has the power to raise mighty men. For when she saw her 7 sons slain within the space of 1 day, she bore it with a good courage because of the expectation that she had in Yehovah. Yea, she exhorted every one of them in her own language, filled with courageous ruachos, with a courageous spirit, and stirring up her womanish thoughts with a manly stomach, she said unto them, I cannot tell how you came into my womb, for I neither gave you breath nor life, neither was it I that formed the members of every one of you. But doubtless the Creator of the world, who formed the generation of man, and found out the beginning of all things, who also of his own mercy gave you breath and life again, as ye now regard not your own selves for his Torah's sake. So he not only gave you life once when he put you in my womb, because of how you've stood for him today, he has given you life again for the Torah's sake. Now Antiochus, thinking himself despised and suspecting it to be a reproachful speech, while the youngest was yet alive, did not only exhort him by words, but also assured him with oaths that he would make him both a rich and a happy man if he would turn from the Torah of his fathers and that also he would take him for his friend and trust him with affairs. You get the picture, folks? What do you think? What do you think is in Christianity? What do you think the government is doing? Looking for people that will sell Elohim down the river. So he's doing, if you look at this, in my mind, a picture that I get is of Yeshua and the temptation in the wilderness. You saw your 6 brothers die manly. You saw your mom die manly. She was manly. She was strong. She was courageous. I'm sure she was quite feminine. And if you will just quit serving Yehovah and disgrace his Torah, I'll give you all the things. But when the young man would in no case hearken unto him, the king called his mother and exhorted her that she would counsel the young man to save his life. Y'all think it's happened? And when he exhorted her with many words, she promised him that she would counsel her son. But she, bowing herself towards him, laughing the cruel tyrant to scorn, spoke in her country language on this manner: O my son, have pity upon me that bore you 9 months in my womb, and gave you such 3 years, and nourished you, and brought you up unto this age, and endured the troubles of education. I've had more trouble with people destroying people in my congregation, in my fellowship, the parents ruining them, than anyone. It is a diabolical abomination that is going on, dear one. And I nourished you, and I brought you up unto this age, and I endured the troubles of education. Wow. I beseech you, my son, look upon the heavens and the earth and all that is therein, and consider the Elohim made them of the things that were not, and so was mankind made likewise. Fear not this tormentor, but being worthy of your brethren, take your death, that I may receive you again in mercy with your brethren. Here we have a mother who in our today would be outraged by the woke society, telling her son to die like a man, and that's really the only way you're going to get to live. While she was yet speaking these words, the young man said, Whom wait ye for? I will not obey the king's commandments, but I will obey the commandment of the Torah that was given unto our fathers by Moshe. And you that have been the author of all mischief against the Ivarim shall not escape the hands of Elohim. Listen, folks. You have no clue the quantity of people that Yehovah is going to punish at judgment. The only question that is in front of us today is, are you going to be one of them? It's not about your earthly perfection. It's about the perfection of your heart, the perfection of your mind to love Yehovah. Yes, you will fail. But I will obey the commandment of the Torah that was given unto our fathers by Moshe. And you that have been the author of all mischief against the Ivarim shall not escape the hand of Elohim. For we suffered because of our sins. Listen, we live in a society where they're teaching our children in school that you have no responsibility for your sin. I've had them tell me I can't be honest. I can't take responsibility. I can't be guilty. Wow. for we suffer because of our sins. And though the living Yehovah be angry with us a little while for our chastening and our correction, yet shall he be at one again with his servants. But you, O godless man, and all of the other most wicked, be not lifted up without a cause, nor puffed up with uncertain hopes, lifting up your hand against the servant of Elohim. For you have not escaped the judgment of El Shaddai, who sees all things. For our brethren who now have suffered a short pain are dead under Elohim's covenant of everlasting life. But you, through the judgment of Elohim, shall receive just judgment for your pride. Folks, when Yehovah says that the worst thing that could happen is someone to have known the truth and turned and walked away from them, makes me weep inside. When Yehovah says things like, they've left me, makes me weep inside. People think they're hurting me, and they have no concept that I'm not the one you need to worry about. Wow. But I, as my brethren, offer up my body and life for the Torah of our fathers, beseeching Elohim that he would speedily be merciful unto our nation, and that you by torments and plagues may confess that he alone is Elohim. So the message is still the same, folks. It's all about Yehovah. And that in me and my brethren the wrath of El Shaddai, which is justly brought upon our nation, may cease. Then the king, being in a rage, handed him worse than all the rest, and took it grievously that he was mocked. So this man died undefiled, and put his whole trust in Yehovah. Last of all, after the sons, the mother died. Let this be enough now to have spoken concerning the idolatrous feast and the extreme tortures. Folks, if we've been some of those people that have been destroyed by our parents, there's not any way to go back and do that. But I can tell you today, the only one who can heal you is Yehovah. You may have to do things and you may have to apply things to get out from under that curse. But don't you be deceived. You're living under a curse. We really haven't had a clue about what truth is. I've been told my whole life that any bad thing wasn't from Yah. And I read this message a few weeks ago, and I thought, my goodness, this is our society. This is people that I know. This is people I know and I have ministered to who have turned and walked away from Yah. I would love to encourage you today that you stop and think again about these words. Yehovah is not a man that he should lie, neither the Son of Man that he should repent. If he said he will do something, there's absolutely no question that that's exactly what he's going to do. We have been so lied to and so deceived that reading stories like this, or me standing up and telling people that maybe David Koresh wasn't the wrong one, is foreign. That there are men who are supposedly men of God standing in pulpits everywhere telling people to shame Yehovah, and because they have no wisdom and they have no understanding, They follow man while they shame Elohim. Wow. What an amazing adventure this is, folks. I have to tell you, day by day, week by week, year by year, problem by problem, I see over and over and over and over how Yehovah is making himself known. I believe there is going and is already a messianist movement happening on the face of this earth. Maybe you can't see it. Maybe you're not one of those who has that belief in him. But I am telling you, he is the same yesterday, today, and forever. And his words are all true. And he will bring every one of them in time to pass. The question we have to contend with today is, where will you stand on that day? Let's pray. Father, bless you for this. Thank you for us to have this technology that we're capable of doing this and then go and be blessed in other places as well. I just thank you so much for your goodness, your mercy, your love, your long-suffering, your patience, but mostly for your Torah. You're educating us into your character and your kingdom. And I bless you for this today. I ask you that you help all of these that may be weak and frail, that you give them strength and courage, and that your will be done. I bless you and honor you. Amen. Amen. Yehovah will kneel before you, presenting gifts, and will guard you with a hedge of protection. I don't know about you, dear one, but this to me is a gift. He presented this to me. He showed me this, and it hasn't left me in spite of all of our everyday struggles that we go through in life. It's been in me. Yehovah will illuminate the wholeness of his being towards you, and he will bring order, and he will give you comfort and sustenance. At the same time, his illumination will cause confusion in people and cause them to run away from him. Yehovah will lift up his wholeness of being, and he will look upon you, and he will set in place everything that you need to be whole and complete. If you're one of those people, I assure you, he's already fulfilling this in your life. We may need to change our perception about what blessed is, but I assure you, being okay with Yehovah at the day we die will be the greatest gift that we ever receive. Shalom to each and every one of you. We will be back on Wednesday, Yehovah willing, filled, full, enlightened, excited, ready to do greater battle. Shalom to you. May you have an amazing Shabbat.